December 28th, 1956. A cold so sharp it could slit the sky. Two sisters step into a flickering movie theater. Barbara, 15, clutching her sketchbook of angels. Patty, 13, humming Elvis's blue suede shoes. They vanish before the credits roll. No struggle, no witnesses, just the echo of a door swinging shut and $4 left untouched in Patty's coat pocket. Money doesn't vanish. People do. 41 days later, they're found exactly as they left, still wearing the same clothes, still holding hands, and according to the coroner, dead for hours in a ditch that was empty that morning. Their mother would whisper one detail that still chills detectives to the bone. Their lips, they were still red. It was December 28th, 1956, a biting Chicago evening. The kind where frost clings to your lungs and streetlights flicker like dying stars. Two sisters, Barbara, 15, and Patricia, 13, boarded the Archer Avenue bus. Their breath visible in the cold. They paid their fares, laughed about Elvis's crooked smile in the movie they'd just seen, and stepped onto the sidewalk at 39th and Damon. The bus doors hissed shut behind them, and then nothing. No struggle, no fingerprints, no final scream echoing into the frozen dark. Just two plaid coats vanishing into the haze of a working-class neighborhood. By midnight, their mother, Loretta, dialed police with a tremor in her voice. "My girls aren't rebels. They always come home. But this time, they didn't." For 23 days, Chicago tore itself apart searching. Cops combed bowling alleys and diners, dragged rivers, and interrogated drunks. Newspapers screamed headlines about the Elvis obsession that lured them to ruin. But the truth was far quieter. And far worse, Barbara and Patricia Grimes didn't run. They were erased. Decades later, their case isn't just a cold file, it's a ghost story. A riddle carved into the city's bones. Because here's what keeps detectives awake even now. In a world of footprints, fingerprints, and eyewitnesses, how do two teenagers dissolve like smoke? This isn't a story about answers. It's about the void they left behind. Barbara and Patricia Grimes were not the kind of girls who made headlines. Not before that night. Barbara, 15, practical, quiet, the one who'd mend her sister's torn stockings with dental floss. Patricia, 13, all dimples and daydreams, humming Elvis ballads while scrubbing supper dishes. They shared a twin bed in a two-room apartment on South California Avenue, where their mother, Loretta, worked double shifts at a soda fountain to keep the lights on. This was not a family steeped in scandal. No secrets, or so it seemed. Barbara's diary entries were filled with math equations and doodles of horses. Patricia wrote poetry about the boy who sat 2 rows ahead in homeroom. Sundays meant starch-stiff dresses and harmonizing in the church choir. Evenings meant homework under a single lamp. Their mother's tired laughter as they bickered over whose turn it was to sweep the floor. They were, in every way, unremarkable. But that's what makes their story so unsettling. Because on December 28th, 1956, they did something perfectly ordinary. They scraped together 75 cents for a matinee of Love Me Tender. Patricia begged to stay for a second showing. Barbara rolled her eyes but agreed. They left the theater at 8:15 p.m., Patricia still sighing over Elvis's crooked smile. They bought hot dogs smothered in mustard. They waved to a neighbor. And then they walked into the coldest hour of their lives. Here's the cruelest twist of all. Their normal is why no one believed them, at first. When Loretta called police, they shrugged. Teenage girls? They'll come back. But Barbara had a geometry test the next morning. Patricia never missed choir practice. These were girls who tied their shoes in double knots, who folded their socks before bed. So ask yourself, what truly happened to two sisters who followed every rule until the world broke every one of its promises? Let's walk through this minute by minute, because in the Grimes sisters' case, time isn't just a measure, it's the enemy. 6:30 p.m., they board the Archer Avenue bus, their laughter sharp enough to cut through the December gloom. Patricia wears a hand-me-down plaid coat 2 sizes too big. Barbara's is buttoned to the collar, hiding a dime store necklace she'd gotten for Christmas. The bus driver later swore they seemed happy. Normal. But here's what he couldn't explain. Why did they pay their fares separately? As if they weren't sure they'd be returning together. 8:15 p.m., they exit the Brighton Theater, squinting under marquee lights that spelled Love Me Tender. Patricia sighs. Elvis didn't even sing enough. Barbara tugs her toward the hot dog stand. A clerk remembers Patricia's mittens stained with mustard. A street sweeper nods at them as they vanish into the crowd. And then 9 p.m., the bus drivers claim. Bus number 1137 rolls into their southwest side neighborhood. He'll swear under oath he dropped off 2 girls in plaid coats. But here's the problem. No neighbors saw them. No footprints in the fresh snow. No voices carrying through the alley. Just the driver's shaky testimony and a nagging question. Did he see coats or ghosts? Midnight, Loretta Grimes paces the apartment. Checks the windows. Reheats coffee. Their beds are empty. But Barbara's geometry book lies open on the kitchen table. Problem number 12 half solved. Patricia's choir robe hangs neatly on its hook. No note. No broken window. Just a deafening silence where 2 sisters should have been. For 23 days, Chicago becomes a beast gnawing at its own bones. Police drag the sewage-choked Chicago River. Volunteers pry open abandoned basements. A psychic claims to see them near water, but they're searching a forest. Tips flood in. They're in Memphis following Elvis. I saw them selling roses in Chinatown. All dead ends. Until January 22nd, 1957, but we'll get to that. For now, hold this timeline in your hands. Turn it over. See how the edges don't meet? A 13-year-old girl doesn't evaporate between a hot dog stand and her front door. Unless someone helped her disappear. January 22nd, 1957, a bitter Tuesday morning. 2 boys, cousins, hunting rabbits in a skeletal grove of trees near German Church Road, paused at the edge of a drainage ditch. Something pale glinted in the mud. They crept closer, and then they screamed. What they found wasn't a body. It was a still life. Barbara and Patricia Grimes lay side by side, their plaid coats buttoned neatly to the throat. Patricia's hands folded over her chest, as if someone had arranged her for a funeral. No scratches, no bruises, not a single strand of hair out of place. Even their shoes were polished. Laced tight, it looked peaceful. But death isn't polite. The coroner arrived, breath fogging in the cold. He knelt, peeled back Barbara's collar, and froze. Her skin was waxy, perfect, no decay. No animal bites. Rigor mortis had come and gone. But here's the problem, bodies don't lie. And this one was screaming contradictions. Fact, they'd been missing 23 days. In January, in Chicago. Fact, their bodies showed 0 signs of exposure. No frostbite, no dehydration. Fact, the autopsy claimed they died of accidental hypothermia. But their stomachs held undigested hot dogs, eaten hours before they vanished. Not 23 days worth of rot. And then there was the location. This ditch wasn't some remote wilderness. It was 45 miles from their apartment. Yes, but just 300 yards from a busy road. Trucks rumbled past daily. How did no one smell? No one see? Unless the girls weren't there the whole time. But the contradictions kept coming. Witnesses swore on Bibles they'd seen the sisters alive days after January 22nd. A diner waitress insisted she served them pancakes on January 24th. A taxi driver claimed he drove them to a drugstore on the 27th. Even their mother, Loretta, begged police. I heard Patricia's voice on the phone. She said, "Mama, come get us." So, what's true? The coroner re-examined the bodies, changed his report. Now it read, probable homicide. But probable isn't proof. No murder weapon, no defensive wounds, no dirt under their nails to suggest they'd fought or crawled. Just nothing. Here's what they couldn't explain. If they died on December 28th, the night they vanished, why did their bodies look fresh? If they died weeks later, why did the hot dogs in their stomachs match the timeline of their disappearance? And why arrange their corpses like porcelain dolls in a ditch half the city drove past? The police spun theories. Maybe the killer kept them alive for weeks. Fed them, bathed them, then let them go. Stranger still, why return them to the world in matching coats? Clean and unharmed, only to dump them like trash? And then there's the Elvis factor. Patricia's pockets held a crumpled movie stub for Love Me Tender. Barbara's diary had a page torn out, December 28th's entry. The last words she ever wrote. Pat's obsessed with that song. Keeps saying Elvis will marry her. I told her he's not coming to Chicago till February. She just laughed, but Elvis wasn't coming in February. His next Chicago show was March 28th. A lie? A misunderstanding? Or bait? Rumors spread. A drifter named Benny Bedwell, a known thief with a car, confessed. Then recanted. A mental patient claimed he'd danced with the girls in a field. Police found nothing. Even the green car witness vanished. his name scrubbed from reports. But the most chilling theory isn't about a killer. It's about time. What if the girls weren't found 23 days after they disappeared, but hours? What if someone, maybe even someone with a badge, stashed their bodies in a morgue drawer until the trail went cold, until the hot dogs in their stomachs could rot, and the timeline could blur? But why? To protect a powerful man? To hide a cop's mistake? Or because the truth was too ugly for 1957 to swallow? We'll never know. The files were lost. Witnesses died. Loretta Grimes buried her girls in St. Mary's Cemetery, their caskets flanked by Elvis wreaths from fans. But the questions lingered. How do two sisters become ghosts in plain sight? How does a city forget while a mother remembers? And why does this ditch, now just a patch of weeds near a Dunkin' Donuts, still hum with the weight of what happened here? The Grimes sisters didn't just vanish. They were unmade, erased by a world that wanted their story to end quietly. But some stories refused to die. Let's be honest, the truth about Barbara and Patricia Grimes isn't buried in evidence. It's buried in stories, some logical, some absurd, all of them haunted by the same unshakable question. How does a lie outlive the people who tell it? Theory number 1. The hitchhike gone wrong. Picture this: 2 shivering girls, breath fogging in the cold, waiting for bus number 1137. It's late. A green Chevrolet pulls up. The driver smiles. Need a ride? Maybe he looked like Elvis. Maybe he offered candy. Maybe they hesitated, but the cold bit their bones, and 45 minutes on a bus felt like eternity. So they climbed in. But here's the flaw. Hitchhiking wasn't their style. Barbara feared strangers. Patricia once wrote in her diary, "Mama says never take rides from men, even if they're handsome." And yet, a green car was reported. A man matching the driver's description later approached other girls. He vanished when police came asking. Coincidence? Or a ghost? Theory number 2. The Elvis obsession. Let's talk about Elvis. Patricia Grimes wasn't just a fan, she was devout. She scribbled his name in the margins of her math homework. She told friends she'd marry him. And here's the spark that lit the rumor mill. Elvis Presley was scheduled to perform in Chicago, but not until March 28th, 1957, 3 months after the girls vanished. So why did Barbara's diary mention a February concert? Was it a misunderstanding? A predator's trap? Meet me backstage. I'm Elvis's friend. He might have whispered. Or maybe Patricia, dizzy with hero worship, dragged Barbara into the cold, chasing a fantasy. But Elvis's team swore, no meet and greets, no secret visits, just a dead end dressed in rhinestones. Theory number 3. The cop who knew too little. Here's a fact that stings. Chicago police botched this case from the start. When Loretta Grimes called to report her daughters missing, they shrugged. Teen girls run off all the time. Even when the bodies were found, detectives ignored witnesses. A waitress named June claimed she served the sisters pancakes on January 24th, 2 days after their bodies were discovered. Police called her a drunk. A taxi driver swore he drove them to a drugstore on January 27th. They called him a liar. But why? Maybe incompetence, maybe arrogance, or maybe something darker. Theory number 4. The killer in the crowd. Serial killers weren't a thing in 1957, but they existed. A man named Edward Benny Bedwell, a small-time crook with a rap sheet for theft, was arrested months later for attacking a woman in a green car. He confessed to the Grimes murders. Then he took it back. Then he confessed again. Police found no evidence. No green car. No witnesses. Just a drifter chasing fame. But Bedwell wasn't the only suspect. A mental patient named Max Flagler wrote letters to the Chicago Tribune claiming he'd danced with the girls in a moonlit field. A farmer reported seeing a man burying something in a ditch days before the bodies were found. Police never followed up. Theory number 5. The family secret. This one's uncomfortable. Loretta Grimes was a struggling single mother. Barbara and Patricia's father? Absent. Distant. Some whispered he'd shown up that winter, demanding money. Others said Barbara had a boyfriend, a 22-year-old trucker named Ray, who vanished after the murders. Police never questioned him. And then there's the cousin. A relative admitted, decades later, that the family suspected someone close. A uncle? A neighbor? But Loretta refused to entertain it. "We don't air dirty laundry," she said. Was she protecting her girl's memory, or someone else? Theory number 6. The cover-up. Let's talk about the files. Police reports vanished. Witness statements were lost. The coroner's original verdict, death by exposure, was altered to homicide years later, but with no new evidence. Why? Maybe the truth implicated someone powerful. A politician's son, a cop's brother, or maybe the department couldn't admit they'd let two girls die on their watch. In 1957, image was everything. Corruption was currency. And the Grimes sisters? They were collateral damage. Theory number 7. The impossible timeline. Here's the theory that keeps historians awake. What if the girls weren't killed on December 28th? What if they were kept alive for weeks? Federal washed, dressed in their own clothes, then driven to that ditch and left to freeze, a twisted killer's gift to their mother. It explains the fresh bodies, the lack of decay, the hot dogs in their stomachs. But why? Ransom? There was no demand. Revenge? Loretta had no enemies. Unless it wasn't about the girls at all. Unless it was about the game, the unthinkable. And then there's this, the theory no one wants to say aloud. What if they're still out there? Not Barbara and Patricia, of course, but the truth, buried in an attic box, tucked in a dead man's diary. Or worse, whispered in a nursing home by a retired cop who drinks his whiskey neat and mutters. We all knew. We all let it happen. The Grimes sisters didn't just leave behind a mystery. They left a mirror. Look into it, and you'll see what you fear most. A world where monsters don't hide in shadows. They hide in paperwork, in shrugs, in the deafening silence of a system that looks away. So, which theory's true? The answer's simpler than you think, all of them. Because in the absence of facts, we make monsters to fit the dark. And the dark is always hungry. Loretta Grimes died in 1982. Her obituary didn't mention Barbara or Patricia. Not because she forgot, because she never stopped looking. Even after the funerals, even after the case went cold, she'd sit by the phone, clutching Patricia's choir robe, whispering, "They'll call. They'll tell me where they hid my girls." But the call never came. The detectives retired, moved to Florida, died of lung cancer and regret. Their case notes, scribbled in smudged pencil, yellowed in storage rooms. Boxes labeled Grimes collected dust next to Christmas decorations and tax records. The city moved on, but the sisters didn't. They haunt the edges of things. In 1978, a folk singer named Eddie Larkin strummed a ballad on a Wicker Park street corner. Two coats of plaid, two hearts of gold / Chicago's winds got a hunger so cold. The song spread, became an anthem for the lost. In 2004, a true crime blogger pieced together a timeline using coffee-stained microfiche. Reddit threads erupted. What if they're still alive? What if it was a time traveler? The theories grew wilder. The truth grew smaller. And in 2019, a podcast host with a velvet voice asked millions of listeners, "Why do we care about two girls who died before our parents were born?" The answer's simple, because they were us. Barbara and Patricia weren't saints. They weren't angels. They were girls who double-knotted their shoes and burned toast and hid report cards. Girls who should have grown into women. Women with wrinkles and grandchildren and favorite recipes. Instead, they became a warning, a riddle, a hole in the world. The mother's ghost, Loretta's grief, was a living thing. She'd show up at the precinct every Sunday, wearing Patricia's scarf. "Did you check the train stations? What about the carnival?" Cops would nod, pat her hand, toss her file into a drawer. After the funerals, she took a job as a night janitor at the Brighton Theater, scrubbing floors where her daughters once spilled popcorn. One night in 1963, a manager found her in the back row, staring at the screen. "They're right here," she whispered. "I can hear them laughing." She died penniless. No headstone, just a footnote in a case that outlived her. The detective's ghost's Detective Joseph Riesel worked the case for 10 years. Retired in 1967, his grandson later found a shoebox in his attic. Inside, Polaroids of the ditch, a dried hot dog wrapper, a note scrawled in shaky cursive. "I think they knew him. He took it to the Chicago PD in 2002. The receptionist shrugged. "We don't even have a file on that anymore." Another cop, Frank Williams, drank himself to death in 1971. His journal entry from 1957 interviewed the bus driver today. He's lying. But about what? The pop culture ghosts in 1992. A slasher film called Night of the Plaid Coats premiered at a drive-in. The tagline, "He loved Elvis too." To death. Critics panned it. Loretta's surviving relatives sued. They lost. In 2020, a TikTok trend had teens lip-syncing to Eddie Larkin's folk song, using vintage filters to become the sisters. Comments flooded in. "They're so pretty. I'd rock that coat. No one mentioned the ditch. The frozen bodies. The mother who died alone. The city's ghost. Chicago's a different city now. The Brighton Theater's a parking lot. The apartment on South California Avenue is a yoga studio. But walk down Archer Avenue at dusk, and you'll feel it, the prickle on your neck, the sense that something's missing. Old-timers still argue at dive bars. It was that green car. Nah, the cops killed M. They don't mention Barbara's A in geometry. Patricia's fear of thunderstorms. And the ditch? The one off German Church Road? It's behind a Dunkin' Donuts now. Kids smoke weed there. Laugh about Snapchat. None noticed the plaque someone bolted to a tree in 1998. It's rusty now. The words eaten by rain. Here lies the truth. May it rest better than we did. The DNA ghost in 2015. A grad student majoring in forensic anthropology petitioned to exhume the bodies. Modern tests could find traces. She argued. The city refused. Not enough public interest. But here's the bitter truth. Even DNA might not solve this. Because the killer, if there was one, is dead. Because the evidence is ash. Because some stories aren't meant to end. The unquiet ghost, what's left. Then, a handful of artifacts. Barbara's diary. Its spine cracked. Sits in a library archive. Page 23. Pat says Elvis has a twin who lives in the moon. I told her she's dumb. But maybe. Patricia's choir robe hangs in a true crime museum next to a serial killer's shackles. A card reads, property of a girl who sang. And every few years, a new documentary asks the same questions, uses the same photos, adds another layer of myth. But the truth? It's in the cracks. In the bus driver's obituary that never mentioned December 28th, 1956, in the coroner's grandson, who found a slip of paper in his grandpa's Bible. COD? In the fact that we'll never know if they suffered. If they called for their mother. If they held hands at the end. The Grimes sisters didn't just vanish. They became a fever dream. A story we tell to feel safer. To pretend monsters leave clues. To believe that if we're good, if we double knot our shoes and come home by curfew, the dark won't find us. But Loretta knew. The detectives knew. And deep down, we all know. Some ghosts don't rest. They wait. They whisper. 67 years later, we're still asking the same question. Not who killed them. Not how. But, why does this hurt so much? Because here's the truth no detective will admit. Some mysteries aren't puzzles to solve. They're wounds. And the Grimes sisters' case is a wound that never scabbed over. Think about it. We live in an age of satellites. DNA. Cameras in our pockets. We track pizza deliveries in real time. But in 2024, we're still staring at a 1956 bus schedule, squinting at grainy photos of two girls in plaid coats, asking how? How does a world full of footprints, ticket stubs, and neighbors who wave hello just lose someone? The answer's worse than a lie. It's a shrug. Barbara and Patricia Grimes didn't fall through cracks. They fell through us, through every cop who assumed they'd run off, through every politician who defunded the search, through every neighbor who said, it couldn't happen here, then locked their doors a little tighter. This isn't a ghost story. It's a reckoning. That night in 1956, the darkness didn't come from a stranger in a green car. It came from the streetlights that didn't shine bright enough, the buses that didn't run on time, the system that said two working-class girls weren't worth the overtime. And long after the headlines faded, that same darkness followed their mother to her grave. Follows us now, like a shadow we can't name. You want closure? There isn't any. Loretta died without a headstone. The killer, if there was one, died without a confession. The Brighton Theater's a parking lot. The only thing left is a question that's not even theirs anymore. Who's next? Because that's the real horror, isn't it? Not the monster in the ditch. The monster in the mirror. The one that says, it won't be me. I'm careful. I'm smart. I double-checked the locks. But Barbara and Patricia were careful. They did check the locks. And still, they're gone. So what do we do with that? We turn them into legends, into podcasts and Reddit threads and TikTok trends. We make their tragedy a hobby, a hashtag, a Halloween costume, because it's easier to dress up as ghosts than admit we're all one bad night away from becoming one. But here's what I hope. The next time you're on a crowded street, laughing with a friend under neon lights, pause, listen, somewhere in the chaos, you'll hear it, the faint creak of a 1956 bus door opening. The rustle of plaid coats, the echo of a mother's voice, worn raw from begging the world to care. And maybe, just maybe, you'll ask yourself, whose names will they forget next? Barbara and Patricia Grimes, 1941 to 1956, remember their names.